Alexa, KITT for easy reference, KITT if you prefer.
It's all about Knight Rider when I have the huge pleasure of talking to the beautiful Catherine Hickland. Catherine played the role of Stevie Mason in first season episode Whitebird, second season episode Let It Be Me, and fourth season episode The Scent of Roses. She also married David Hasselhoff back in the 80s. And this conversation took place in Atlanta during the Southern Nights Atlanta Convention back in July of 2023. And the format is slightly different from what you probably have gotten used to from these interviews. I hope you'll appreciate that I take the back seat and let Catherine do the talking. I am present in the hotel room, as you will see during the interview, but let's leave the talking to Catherine. Enjoy this very much.
All right.
Yeah, and you
Make
don't
myself pretty.
You don't. I don't think you need to make.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. Well, I am so honored to have been able to play Stevie Mason because the character was just so unique. And I remember growing up, I was watching a show called Starsky and Hutch. And I don't know if you had that where you are, but it was a very big show in the 70s. And and there was a role of a girl that came back to Starsky's life, and they fell in love, and then she ended up dying, and it was just it just affected me so deeply. And I remember the actress's name. I remembered what she looked like forevermore. I mean, it was that impressionable to me. So when this role came up, it actually was my idea, this role. I created the character, but I didn't write the episode. The episode was written, of course, by one of the writers of Knight Rider. And when I came up with the idea of Michael Knight / Michael Long having a past life, and that he must have had a girlfriend, and I of course imagined myself in the role, and it was all born from this Starsky and Hutch moment in my head. So when they said that they would do it, then they made me audition for it. So there was a chance that another actress might play it, and that made me feel so bad because I wanted to play this role so much. So I had to win it, and I did, and I was just so honored to play her, and she had the same effect apparently on the viewers that the Starsky and Hutch episode had on me. So it was like a full circle dream come true. Well, I've always played around with my voice. I never considered myself a singer. I was an actress who sang a little bit, and so I didn't mind doing that at all, and it was really fun. It was a big dream for him, and so, you know, it was nice to see him get that dream and be able to, he made albums and he still sings to this day. For me, it was just really a fun little thing, and it was part of the acting job, and so that's how I looked at it. Oh, when I read the script, that's a great question, because, you know, you never want your character to die, really, because, you know, then you know you're not going to come back unless you're a ghost. In soap operas, which is where I spent most of my career, you can, you know, be cremated and come back from the dead because the stories are so crazy. Yeah. But in this kind of television, it's not likely. I thought it was appropriate because, you know, they couldn't tie that character up to a romance because he was very popular. You know, David Hasselhoff and the character of Michael Knight was very popular, and so part of the audience, the men wanted to be him and the women wanted to be with him, and so I thought it was appropriate that they free him up again, so that the fantasy could continue. Of, you know, the audience, and so it made for good drama, so I thought it was a good call.
Great.
they were long days, and the cast and crew of that show worked so hard, as they all did on those episodic television of the 80s. They only had 6 or 7 days maybe to shoot an entire episode. And you might think, well, that's a lot of time, but it's not, because you're only shooting about 3 pages a day. And especially with a show like Knight Rider, where it was stunt heavy, and it was, there was so much to do, and it was so physical, and with all the stunts they had and the cars, and it was complicated. It was a miracle that they could do what they did. We started, definitely around 5 o'clock in the morning, and you would go till 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock at night, and sometimes even more. And it was a very tight-knit set. Everybody was very close, and it was like a family feeling, so it was a beautiful set to work on. But it has to be, because you're under so much pressure, and they're under that pressure every week. For us, we just come in as a guest star, and it's just pressure for that week. They're under that pressure every week. So it was amazing how nice everybody really was. Well, when you're in a studio, you're in a very controlled environment. Your lighting, your sound, everything is controlled. You're in a sound stage, and it's a lot easier. When you're on location, everything is, light. It's about noise. It's about, what's going to get in the way. But it's also more aesthetically beautiful. So you see things and move, have that freedom of movement. It's two different, it's apples and oranges. It's two different things, but it's not, one is not necessarily easier than the other. You still have to remember where you have to be. When you say this word, you have to be here and holding this prop. It's all the same. Well, as they shoot episodes, they're timing it, so they know if they're overshooting, and they know when they have to cut the script, and they know if they have to add something, or if they want to change a detail, or if something was missed. So you're always going to get rewrites of some sort for some reason. Because I worked in soap operas my whole career, I was so used to having changes given to me at the last minute, and much more because we would shoot a 1 hour episode every day. So I was used to that kind of pressure, and but it was, sometimes it was disappointing, because you thought, I don't want to cut that. But it's not your show, it's theirs, so you do what they tell you to do. But there's always changes due to time and story and facts and things like that. It's funny, I didn't notice anything different from year to year, because I would only sit in kit once a year, when I was doing the episode.
You were always in the hero.
And I was always in the passenger seat, right? And so I would be, how do you like the new car? And I said, well, it looks the same, because I was a girl, and everything, all the electronics looked the same to me. But I was always enthralled to sit inside of that car. It was such an honor, such an awesome car, and still is. I think the producers were always so nice to everybody, and I really didn't know them that well. We didn't socialize away from the set. We didn't go out to dinner so I really didn't know them on a personal level. I really knew them more on a professional level, and we had a line producer that would be on the set, and the executive producer, you might not even see him for the whole shoot. Because he's busy getting all the other episodes ahead ready. So, no, I didn't really know them, I got to know them more after at events like this. Yeah. And that was kind of fun, because when you're working, there's always this funny little thing, and when you're just it's, it's a whole different feeling. So I got to know them more after the show was over. Edward Mulhare was, I don't know, I just felt a real connection to him. I couldn't tell you why. I did grow up watching him on a TV show called The Ghost and Mrs. Muir when I was a little girl. But I just felt a deep connection to him. And, he was I think that today you would call him a curmudgeon. He had kind of a funny little personality. He would get grouchy. You know, he was already pretty up there in age, and to be doing episodic television is very demanding. So it would be understandable, you know, that long hours would get to somebody. But he was always so incredible with me, and I could make him laugh, and we just had a special bond that I appreciated. And so when David and I got married, I was estranged from my real father, and so I didn't have anyone to give me away, and Edward offered to give me away at the wedding, and it was and probably is still the biggest honor of my life, because it meant a lot to both of us. And if you said why, I don't know, it just did. It's that unspoken feeling of respect and gratitude for it. Yeah. Yes, and we had the same minister. So the minister that married David and I in real life, his name is Henry Catrona, who's still one of my best friends. He was my minister in real life back then, and he married us on the show, and he married us in real life. We got engaged on the episode of I think it was not the Scent? I don't remember what episode it was, but we got engaged at, I think, after. Maybe it was Whitebird. It might have been. And he asked me to marry him at the wrap party. And then there was a big cake on the set with a KITT car on the top. And then and it was so nice, and everybody knew it but me. So it was a shock. And they said, open the hood to the car. And I thought, okay, I don't know why I'm doing that, but I opened the hood of the car, and there was an engagement ring in there. And so we got engaged at the wrap party, and then we were married in 1984. I believe it was March 1984. And Henry Catrona married us in real life, and he married us on Knight Rider. So that was kind of fun. Yes, Patricia was a very organic kind of girl. You know, she was a no nonsense, and she was very kind of a serious girl, especially for our age. We were young, and we were also young. She was great in the role, perfect for the role, and I loved working with her. And I was shocked when they discontinued her role, because I just thought she was perfect for it. You bought her as a mechanic. You bought her as a brainiac. You bought her as someone that, was his confidant. So I really enjoyed Patricia McPherson. And Rebecca, of course, is just, she at that time was, her life was very glamorous, and it was just a different experience, but it was also a great experience. And I didn't really work with her that much, like I did in the beginning, in the first episode. So I didn't get to know Rebecca very well until the last decade or so, by attending Knight Rider events, and she's just a terrific girl, and so it's been really good to get to know her too.
Yeah.
Well, that's a really good question, because I think that there is no preparing anybody for that kind of life change. And when we met each other, we were both on soap operas. He was on The Young and the Restless, and I was on a show called Texas on NBC here. I lived in New York, he lived in LA. And so when we got together, he was just getting ready to leave the soap opera, because he was going to try his hand at other things. And Knight Rider came along pretty quick, and there was no predicting really, how fast that show was going to take off, how absolutely huge it was going to be, and how the stardom that would come from that. It is crazy to think that that's not going to change your life, because everything around the person changes. So it's not so much that they change or that you change, but everything around you changes, and that forces the change. Then, of course, you have things you never had before. There's excessive money, there's excessive changes in your life, there's excessive attention on that person. And so, things changed a lot, and it was a challenge, and we didn't make it, but you know, I think that everybody does their best, and it's a lot. It's amazing to me that any marriages do survive that, you know, because things change so drastically. But you know, it all turned out okay. We're all where we're supposed to be, I think. It was just such a different world because, and honestly, whenever Buzz was going to do the stunts, or if they were going to do the two wheels, put the car up on the two wheels, I always made sure if I wasn't working on my own show that day that I would go down to the Universal Studios to the Knight Rider set. That's the only time I would go down there when I wasn't working there to watch the stunts, because he would say, oh, we're going to do this stunt today, that, and I was so blown away by stunts and the stuntmen and stunt women and how they did things, and so I always made a point to go down there to watch that. I didn't feel that there was ever any danger. It was the most amazing, safe crew. These stuntmen were the best in the business, and you know, but I did used to marvel that, you know, how the inside of the car with the chairs, the stuntmen would get inside the seat of the car, and they would only have this like little bit of screen that they could look out of at the back of the seat, and that's all that they had to drive the car and do these stunts because, of course, no one was supposed to be in the car. So it was really quite something what they did, and I don't know how they did all that without anyone getting seriously injured. You know, I mean, other shows of the 80s, they had injuries on Airwolf and, you know, and things like that. I think Knight Rider had a pretty good record, as I recall.
Yeah.
No, I just remember Whitebird being the most special because it was just such a tender love story, and the audience knew something that the characters didn't know, which was that he was Michael Long. I didn't know who he was. The audience did know who he was. You know, it was one of those very special times where you think, it wasn't even until I saw the actual episode that I thought, this is so cool. But I love that when the audience knows something the characters don't. That's a big secret like that. And that was a special, tender, wonderful time. No problems, no incidents. We didn't have any arguments. We didn't, you know, it's really hard to work with your wife or husband on a TV show. It's very difficult because there's so much pressure, and it's already you know, an odd situation. But that's the episode for me that I recall being the happiest making.
Yeah.
You know, he was so present in that scene. He was very emotionally present in that scene. And so that was really great for me because, you know, we don't shoot things at the same time like we're doing right now, or like we do on soap operas where 5 cameras might be running at once. This is a one camera, then you turn it around and you do the other camera. And so you have to kind of remember the thought and the space of mind that you're in. And that's the challenge of doing film as opposed to doing taped shows. And but you know, he was so present, and he, you know, sometimes the actor won't be there on camera when it's your turn for your close-up. Maybe you'll get their stand-in, or maybe the script supervisor will read the lines. But he was there and, you know, really helped me out with that. And so that was really helpful in that sense. Yes, that would be a yes to that question.
Catherine Hickland, it has been fantastic talking to you. Thanks so much for taking the time. It has been a huge pleasure, and I wish you all the best of luck in the future.
Thank you, and it's been so much fun to meet you and meet someone that has my heritage, because I am Danish and I've never been to Denmark, and my brother has, and you know, just to know that the show was so well loved there, and that you care so much, and that all of you who care so much, we all care. It was a great time in television. It was a great show and a great honor to be part of this iconic, incredible show. So thank you very much.
You're brilliant. You're so brilliant.
Thank you.
friends, it's me, KITT. When I'm not out fighting crime, I like to follow my friends at knightriderhistorians.com. Check it out.